Alright.
Yes. We're good? Awesome. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Doing Better Show. I am Oliver Ox, joined as usual by Deezy. Deezy, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. A little warm today. For those of you, who couldn't tell, you can definitely tell as I see the glisten and the glisten and the glisten. It's rather warm here. We don't have any air conditioning set up in this particular unit of the Doing Better studios thus yet, so we're a little warm today. However, our lack of comfort will be overcome by our inspiration today. It's going to be wonderful because we are joined remotely, good day to be remote, by a very special guest. Catherine Tarnowski is here to chat with us about lots of things, but one thing in particular, her company, Northeast Therapy and Service Dogs. We're going to learn all about that. I think it's a really interesting and important time to have these conversations because the service dog thing seems to have sort of jumped on the scene from nowhere in the last sort of 10, 20 years. And I think there's been some pushback. And I think it's interesting to make the delineations between people using these properly and maybe not, and the ways in which we can have incredible growth and outcomes from these things, as well as lots of other things. So, Catherine, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm well. It's nice to be sitting down. I've been working with the dogs all day long. So, yeah, in and out of this beautiful weather. I'm outside playing with them and keeping them happy, sharp, exercised, and cool.
That must be an extra challenge today. Like what things, because you guys have a couple, I was looking through your website, it looks like the little schnauzers and the big German shepherds, right? That's your game?
Yeah, our dogs. We also have a Great Dane. He's a rescue. He's fantastic. And then we take in other people's dogs for boarding with training, daycare, and then some people come for training sessions and they are training at home. So they're not using us for daycare or boarding. So we do boarding, training, and boarding with training. We have a daycare with training built in as sort of an upcharge service that we provide, but the people aren't here with their dog for that. Their dog's just working on skills. And so then we have our own breeding pack. And then we have retired dogs and rescues. We have rehabbed rescues for a long time and helped to place them in the proper home. We usually get the ones that have bounced out a couple of times.
That sounds perfect for you. We're always up for a challenge, right?
Just like, yeah, it's residential treatment right in my home.
So I think I'm really excited that when we talked the other day and I found out you were into this, it's really exciting for me because like I was saying in a little intro there, this service dogs thing, like I think 20 years ago, like basically wasn't a thing. Certainly from my perspective, I didn't recognize it. And now, like, some people can bring their dogs into the grocery store and on the plane. And for a lot of us, we're like, wait, what happened? What's going on? And I think, as with many things that are a little more complicated and in depth in nature, that
nuanced.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. That are a little nuanced in nature. I think there's people sort of have this like meh attitude towards it, right? Like I think there's a little bit of a kickback of like, why is this person bringing their dog on the plane, kind of thing. And like as someone who's on planes frequently, I must say that I've been guilty in the past of being like, the dog's too fucking big to be on this plane, whatever, etc. But so hearing you talk about it, because I know you from our time together working in residential, and I know that you've been a licensed social worker forever, effectively.
Yeah, about 26 years now. With my advanced license, I've been in the field for about 30 years.
So like coming, and then I've also known you to be a dog person for a long time, and it seems like I didn't know that you were a super dog person when we first met, and it seems like as I've known you over the years, your dogness has become more pronounced. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I wasn't missing previous dog loving, and then
no.
Okay.
And I think that so a couple of the factors that fall into that is I used to have 1, 2, or 3 dogs, and I would have one that I would bring to work with me specifically for the benefit of the clients in the program, and that dog would come specifically on days when the psychiatrist was there. And the psychiatrist who couldn't get these young people to talk to him or participate in their own treatment, he asked if I could bring the dog into the sessions, and they would want to pet the dog and sit with the dog and give the dog treats. And the psychiatrist would say, well, first we need to take care of you. And when you're talking to me, then I'll let you talk to the dog. So he leveraged the access to the dog to engage the kids in their own treatment. And so that was one of the ways that I started to integrate dogs into the workplace. And I used a program called Pet Partners to get my dog registered as a therapy dog, which actually involves a skills test for the handler and the dog. You have to pass it, and you have to retest every couple of years. And they're really working to make sure that people who bring their dogs to work for the betterment of their clients are bringing dogs that are going to be safe in that environment, right. And that the handler is trained on how to deal with situations, right? So if you take a dog to a nursing home or a hospital, you don't want a dog that's going to eat things off the floor, because it could be medication that fell on the floor. Might be an unsafe situation.
Okay.
If you're going to bring a child into a residential treatment program with angry teenagers, there's going to be door slamming. There's going to be yelling and screaming. Some dogs will react badly or be really stressed in those situations. They're not going to bring comfort. They're going to need comfort. And that really isn't, that's not your job. You're there to help people and have the dog assist. So organizations like Pet Partners, and there are others, they facilitate the therapy dog sort of registration in a more formal way, and actually more formally than service dogs. And we can get into that a little bit later. But I only brought one dog at a time, and I didn't bring the dog every single day because it wasn't conducive to my job. So yeah, you probably saw Xena, my little schnauzer. Yeah, back at work. And then later I had a Boston Terrier, and I got her certified. And yeah.
So I think what's great about this is because you're leading from the mental health social work sort of side rather than the dog side. I think that it's really interesting to see the way that you sort of think through everything. And it's a very... Sure. It's something that I think not a lot of people are familiar with. Definitions. So service dog therapy, can you help make this clear?
Yes, this is one of my favorite things to explain, because we get inquiries all the time, and truly sometimes people don't know what they're actually asking for. So a service dog is a dog that helps a person complete tasks that they actually can't do by themselves because of their disability. And their disability has to be validated by a medical provider of that person. The person doesn't have to disclose their disability, but they may have to disclose what does the dog do for them, the actual service. So we used to have these conversations about the difference between goals and needs, right? And so really it's about what need is getting met by the dog. So you don't need to know if I have epilepsy or if I have POTS or some other cardiac or blood pressure condition. What you need to know is if I'm not well, the dog's going to alert me and then apply deep pressure on my body. And so it doesn't matter if it's epilepsy or it's POTS or something else, but that's what the dog is going to do that I can't do by myself. And so there's alerting, medical alerting, and there's interventions that dogs do for people. And that includes psychiatric disabilities, and those are things you can't often see. So you talk about how service dogs weren't really on the radar for a long time, but who is the seeing eye dogs. So if you saw a person with a dog with a harness, you thought that person's blind or vision impaired, because seeing eye dogs have been around for a very long time. And they often would use German Shepherds, Labrador Retrievers, occasionally Golden Retrievers, and then they got into trying to crossbreed to get rid of the shedding for people who are allergic. That's a whole other thing. But there were very few breeds selected and trained specifically as seeing eye dogs. They had to be a certain size to be able to, be useful. You wouldn't use a Schnauzer as a seeing eye dog. They're too low to the ground for a blind person to really benefit from that engagement. Gotcha. But if you have PTSD, and you might be inclined to be triggered or have a panic attack, and it doesn't matter the breed of the dog. If that dog can do for you something you can't do for yourself to bring you back to reality, notice that you're actually safe, and you can move through your moment and get to the next part of life. For a lot of disabled veterans, they use dogs for PTSD. First responders, retired police, fire, these are the people, our lives are in their hands. And eventually their job takes a toll on them, and they have a hard time finding their way back. And dogs are like for the guy's guy that's running into a burning building, who will, like, we're running the other way and they're running in to save lives or administer Narcan, because that's really a lot of what they've have to do, and see some really tragic things along the way. They're not so much into talk therapy. It takes a lot for them to warm up to that. But men have been relating with dogs for generations, right? That bond, that unconditional love, that sense of like companionship and teamwork. And so, there's this thing that happens when you have a dog that's bonded to you, looking in your eyes and basically saying like, yeah, you can fall apart, I'm still here, right? Like, I'll be right next to you. And if you need me to lean on you, lay on you, go get someone, poke you, because they can notice changes in your body chemistry by your scent before you would even know it. So the whole point of having like a medical alert dog is that you find out that you are going to have an episode before the episode hits you, and you can go and sit down. You can put yourself in a safe space. You can pull over and stop driving, right? Because you don't know that a seizure is coming on or something like that. A big change in your blood pressure is happening. Because for some people, they have they still have a driver's license. They're still caring for their family. They're still on a job, but their disability impairs them for a period of time episodically. So if the dog is with them, that helps them get ahead of it and get through it. And some people can heal along the way, and they might not need their service dog as often, but they don't know if they do or they don't. So they should keep the dog with them. And people with service dogs can actually use them as therapy dogs. So there's a distinction here. A service dog completes tasks for a disabled person they can't do for themselves. And the person has the rights through the Americans with Disabilities Act to bring their dog in places where maybe dogs aren't usually allowed.
Gotcha.
It's the person, not the dog, that has the rights. And the responsibility to the person is to keep charge of their dog and to keep a letter on their person from a medical provider validating that they are disabled and they need this dog to complete certain tasks. And that's really what they need. There's no big registry. There's no test service dogs have to pass. There's no ideal breed, right, that all service dogs ought to be. It's unique to the person's disability and to the match with that dog.
So because you mentioned a whole bunch of fairly diverse things that you're talking about here that they do. Is there, and you also spoke earlier about the differences in breeds and what they're good for. Is there some like research going into matching things now? Like here's, if you're a PTSD sufferer, here's our these things. And if you're,
I'll answer your first question fully. Then we'll get to that second part. So a therapy dog is a dog who is of service by being a companion with a professional person who's a handler for the benefit of a customer or a client. So your chiropractor, your attorneys, your district attorneys in the courthouses will use a therapy dog for victims of violent crimes and sex crimes that need to come in and tell their story and get used to the courtroom and kind of get used to what it's going to be like to testify. They're using therapy dogs to help people get through those difficult times. The dog belongs to the handler, to the professional. The professional does not have a disability, and there are zero rights, neither has any rights to have that dog doing what they're doing. It is the permission of the employer. So it is the discretion of the hospital or the nursing home to allow a person to come in as a volunteer visitor with a therapy dog to be uplifting to the elderly clients there who maybe don't have a lot of family visitors, or to the children in the cancer ward at the hospital. It is entirely up to the institution to allow volunteers or their own employees to bring the dogs to work and to be of service to others. During COVID, one of our dear dog friends was working in the call centers and going desk to desk to the people taking the frantic phone calls from people who are really afraid of the virus, afraid of the vaccine, asking all kinds of questions every time the CDC came out with more information. There was a call center. And that stress comes right through the phone lines. These people are working long hours. They're shoulder to shoulder like telemarketers, answering calls and trying to comfort people. But who's comforting them? A dog who's silent in the background, going desk to desk, that they can pet, that they can, maybe release some of their frustration, some of their own fear, and be comforted by. And so a friend of ours who was first a dog client, now we're friends, she's a psychologist who works in schools doing psychological testing. So the dog is available for kids who are going to be testing, but she volunteered at a call center and brought him in.
Wow.
And she got him certified through Therapy Dogs International, TDI, for that. So a therapy dog doesn't require its owner to have a disability, and it can be a volunteer or professional activity that they're doing. And they have an identified handler or more than one who's allowed to take them in these places with the permission of the institution. An emotional support animal is a pet that is owned by a person that brings them an extra level of emotional support based on a diagnosis, not necessarily a disability, but a diagnosis that they have. And a medical provider must validate that the person needs the emotional support animal to enjoy the full benefits of their home life. And it gives them permission, with some exceptions and loopholes, to have an animal in your home in a situation where the place you live might not normally allow you to have that animal. And that can be a cat, a dog, a rabbit, it could be other animals. An emotional support animal, which many are dogs, they might be getting permission to live in an apartment where that apartment either doesn't allow any pets at all, doesn't allow dogs, or maybe the size of the dog or the breed of the dog doesn't conform. But because a medical provider has added that dog to that child's treatment plan or that individual's treatment plan for their diagnosis, which could be mental health or physical health diagnosis, but it doesn't require the person have a disability, and the person has no right to take that dog in public places where dogs aren't allowed. So they can't walk into a grocery store and say, this is my emotional support animal, I have my letter. They can only do that if they have a valid disability and the dog is completing a task they can't do themselves because of their disability. And that's the big distinction between a service dog and an emotional support animal. An emotional support animal might be helping a person who's having a difficult time adjusting to a big life change, or a trauma or a medical problem, but isn't necessarily serving a disability. And it's typically used to get permission for where you live.
Okay, so those are three different categories. Okay.
Totally three different things. And I email out a document to everyone who reaches out to us through our website, because many people will say, I want a therapy dog. And I'm like, oh, what's your profession? Where do you work? What do you want to do with this dog? And then I find out really they have a diagnosis and they want to feel some type of comfort. That's a therapy dog. Or that's an emotional support animal. Or they might actually have a valid disability, and what they need is a service dog, because what they're going to use the dog for is actually to treat their disability. It doesn't cure a disability, but it does become part of the treatment plan.
So this seems like something that might evolve and get more complicated over time. Is that because
for sure. But on YouTube, you can search, literally type in breed or breed traits or what to look for. Is my dog a good candidate to be a therapy dog? Is my dog a good candidate to be a service dog? And most of what you'll find on there does go through some basic criteria, and that speaks often to temperament more than anything else. There are some breeds that have that temperament more than others, but there are always anomalies, right? So I was working in a doctor's office, physician's practice, primary care. There were in-house therapists for people who were referred for mental health care, but they were already customers of this primary care office. And in the lobby, a woman came in with a service dog that was maybe a husky or a Malamute. Not typical for a service dog. And I said, geez, your dog is so calm. Can I ask you about your dog? And she said, yeah, sure. And I said, are you using this dog as a service dog? And she said, yes, but I have to put him on the treadmill for 5 miles in the morning before I take him out to places where we're going to be sitting still for hours, right? Sitting and waiting at the lab for tests, sitting and waiting in a doctor's office. Because of the breed, you have to honor what that animal needs in order to be okay. So many breeds want to work with people. They're just dogs in general, many
Right.
breeds. Some are very aloof, very independent. They want to be out front. They're basically like, you stay here, I'll go take care of it. Right? That's not ideal for someone who needs a dog right next to them all the time. It's just going to be a clash of drives. The dog is going to have drives that aren't suitable for that person's disability. And then again, sometimes there's an anomaly. So You would say a Belgian Malinois. You see them in all the movies, right? They're out there amped. They're super athletic. They're full of energy. If they don't get what they need exercise and training wise, yeah, you could have problems with aggression. And then some people have a perfectly calm one, right? And they're chill, and they're great for hanging out in the house with a person who isn't super social or getting out and about, And yeah, maybe they're using a treadmill to help that dog exercise, but it might just be that dog is a chill dog. And they love golden retrievers. They see these golden retrievers and they're like, I call them like precious moments, those little figurines, you see the golden retriever and you're like, oh, it's just like laying there on the porch, just waiting for me to come home and loves me all up. But you see a golden retriever puppy, they're out of their minds.
Yep.
They're out of their mind. They're running around crazy. They don't sit still. If you were a person with a disability, that maybe a golden retriever, but not a young one, not typically.
I had a totally different, much more intelligent question than this, but there's treadmills for dogs. That's a real thing.
Oh yeah. So we have probably one of the lesser expensive, more accessible to folks, right? Treadmill, and we have 2 of them. And so we use them to exercise the dogs when the weather is not conducive to them getting as much. And I can't possibly, as it is, I walk probably, I don't know what 20,000 steps is in miles, but I go about 15 to 20,000 steps a day,
Right.
7 days a week. I can't give the dogs as much exercise. I can't even run. I mean, I'll run if you're chasing. I mean, not if you're chasing. I'll run from the cops. All right, I'll run from the cops. I'll run from the bad guys. Run from the good guys and the bad guys. That's me. But yeah, the dogs are like, come on, let's run. And I'm like, dude, I don't run.
And that does it for them. Like I hate the treadmill. I guess it tires me out. But like, they're happy on the treadmill.
They're not unattended. They're not on there unattended.
Yeah.
And certainly not all dogs like it. Not all dogs want to train on it. But a dog that's really meant to move, that really needs to get their steps in to be sane. If you're right in front of them and saying like, oh, good job, you're so great, you're like the smartest, most handsome dog ever, right? They love it. They're like going for it. And they pace themselves. There are some slat mill style treadmills for dogs, and they literally make it go with their own, right? It's not electronic like the ones we use at the gym. That's the one I have for my dogs. And then I see the pace the dog wants to go. I'll speed up for some dogs and slow down for other dogs. And you can actually give them a cardio workout by doing interval training with them,
Cool.
Which is really good. And you can actually see how well they're tracking and how their joints are. If you have a dog that has like an injury on a toe or an ankle or a shoulder or a hip, you're going to see it if you're sitting on a stool in front of your treadmill with your dog. You're going to notice that a lot sooner than if you're out walking your dog all the time and you're not really taking them for a run. And when you're running, try and stare at that dog to see if they have a broken toenail.
Yeah.
You're going to end up on the ground,
Yeah.
right? So when you have a dog on a treadmill, there's a secondary gain that you can actually see their physique, their ergonomics, that you can see that they're healthy and they're moving in the way they should be. They're breathing in the way they should be. They're not getting fatigued, right? Like a dog with cardiac disease or that's obese, you're going to recognize some health problems. If you're watching a person exercise or a dog exercise, you might actually catch a health problem sooner.
So, how did you guys end up with the breeds that you like? How did you decide on the breeds that you work with?
Sure. So Brian was always a German Shepherd enthusiast. His father was one of the first canine officers in the county, in Essex County, in Massachusetts. He's a World War II vet, came back and decided to become a police officer. He was a canine officer. He did search, rescue, evidence retrieval, chasing people out of buildings, interrupting domestic violence. A lot safer to send the dog in, right? To get people to keep their hands to themselves and sit down or stay put. And they can, get in and out of other places a lot more easily, right? Could send a dog in a window,
right,
and then follow after. So he really was pioneering that in Essex County in the late 70s. And so Brian was inspired by that. And a lot of the canine officers took part regularly in dog competition in what was called Schutzhund at the time. Now it's called IPG. But basically, it's obedience, tracking, agility, protection, right? And so with those skills, you're looking at what military dogs do. You're looking at what police dogs do. They use dogs in the jails, right? But you find individuals want protection dogs for themselves as well. And they also want sport dogs. So sport dog, it doesn't need to protect, but they're competing because they love it. They're built for it. So German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, there's a number of even some bully breeds that do really well doing this type of sport work. His father really inspired him in that, and he grew up with police dogs in the house all around him and went to competitions with his father and watched him compete. So when he was a young man, he ordered his first German Shepherd to be imported from Germany to train her, and then later got another dog from a world famous dog competitor and trained him, competed him. And when we first got together, I had already been doing the therapy dog thing. And what I wanted to do was train professionals with their dogs on how to use them appropriately in the workplace and have them be getting tested and taking the handler class, taking the team evaluation, and preventing problems from happening, and also preventing us from getting kicked out of places with our dogs. Because if you're doing it correctly, you can enjoy doing it. But if people are abusing it and bringing their unruly pets to work, it spoils it for everyone. And then the institutions change their policies and just don't let you bring any dogs in. So it was a way to kind of foster things to keep moving forward. I wanted to do that. He was already training German Shepherds for sport. And then as we got together, we started talking about the value of training dogs for service and emotional support. And so he already had his expertise in German Shepherds. I had miniature Schnauzers and Boston Terriers. Boston Terriers great for certain kinds of things. Miniature Schnauzers and German Shepherds go together, right? They're from Germany. They're farm dogs, working dogs, used to being on a team together. The small dogs take care of all the small vermin on the property, right? They dispense with the moles and the voles and the rabbits, and they alert because their hearing is a little more sensitive than the German Shepherds and the other livestock guardian dogs. So they can alert to predators that are around the property on the farm. And then the big dogs go and dispense with the predators, right, for the farm. So they're working line dogs, and they were meant to work together, and they were meant to work together for people. And so miniature Schnauzers, because they're alert dogs, they also can be very vocal. Some people don't always love that about them, or they do love that about them. So there's a number of small breeds that can be very sort of barky. And we did have a client that picked a breed that I was really unsure would be a nice match for service work. But it turned out she had narcolepsy, and she would sleep through taking her medication. So she would just fall asleep, but she'd lose whole days. She couldn't take care of herself. She couldn't live productively. So she wanted a little barky dog. And we trained the dog to alert her to take her medication and to wake her up if she was dozing off so that she could regroup and then take the medication to be able to stay awake and function. So, I was skeptical at first, but I said, all right, let's go. And there's a test called the Volhard aptitude test that's done on puppies at age 7 weeks. It doesn't matter the breed. And that tests for temperament before there's acquired learning. And that's going to be the best predictor of whether a dog is best for sport or something that requires leadership and aloofness, that separateness from people. A dog that's really timid or shy, that really is better for a homebody, someone that really doesn't want to be taking their dog out socializing a lot. And the dogs like in that middle range that want to bond with you, they come when they're called, they fetch a thing that you throw, they're not completely thrown off by opening an umbrella or making a startling noise. Maybe they're noticing and they're curious, but they're not cowering and running away any more than they're just ignoring it. And so there's a number of exercises, activities that you do with 7-week-old puppies that completes this Volhard temperament test and helps you choose whether or not that particular puppy would be a good match for either service or to be a pet or to be a sport dog or to be a homebody dog that might need a little special care itself. That dog might need a therapy dog of its own, a therapy human.
So that makes sense. So you're basically, this sort of temperament test is figuring out what is their natural sort of God-given personality that they came in with. So we don't try and train something. We don't try and fit a square peg into a round hole kind of thing.
No, it's not fair to the dog. And people are disappointed, right? So you want to have a happy, healthy dog that's thriving in the setting that you're going to be putting the dog in. And so I think a lot of people and people with pets also suffer from great disappointment because of their expectations, right? So what we learn about disappointment is that's a lack of acceptance of reality. When we're looking at reality and we like, pinch ourselves and say, like, all right, this is reality, and you can accept reality, then the space for disappointment really closes up.
That makes a lot of sense. So we talked to lots of entrepreneurs on here, lots of people who are doing new things. And how, so with you and Brian, you both had your dog experience. You obviously have your wealth of social work experience. How did you sort of decide to put it together and then like pull the trigger and do all the, the scary stuff?
Shopping for a home. So we were shopping for a home at the same time. We were shopping for a home that would be conducive to having dogs in the home and space outside. So we need a certain amount of acreage, a certain amount of property in a location that would be convenient enough, but also private enough, right? Like we don't want to be somewhere where the neighbors are going to be bothered by dogs barking.
Right.
So you want to be sort of res ag, right? You want to be zoned for agriculture, residential. You don't want to be necessarily downtown.
Right.
So we've rented for a year in Newfields, an area that we love. It reminds me a lot of where I raised my family in Ipswich, Mass. Just a smaller, like a micro version, 1/10 of the size.
Yeah.
We're both from Salem, Mass. We graduated from high school together. We did not date in high school, so that answers that question. But when we sort of found each other later with this common passion, we picked a property that would be conducive to doing that. We actually needed to get a variance because in the 1950s, when our zoning laws were written, a home daycare dog boarding program didn't really exist as a home business. So there's a list of home businesses that are zoned in our town, and there's regulations that apply to it, but we didn't really quite fit into that. And so instead of putting ourselves like in a vulnerable position to be doing something that there's not a law to protect us doing it, I ended up applying for a variance with the town. And I had a little bit of experience doing that before for a building project in another town. So we put together all of our information, presented to the zoning board, and got approval to run a home-based business. You know, it's interesting. I think the only zoning limitation that really affected us is a home-based business in 1956 needed to not be visible from the street. So by virtue of being a home-based business, so if you hung a shingle saying you're an accountant and you had, a little kiosk in your driveway and people were sitting outside doing accounting with you and not inside your house, that would be against the zoning law, because that would be visible from the street.
Okay.
Right. So if you are training dogs and people, we can't do all of it inside the house. A lot of it is leash work. A lot of it is handling. Some of it's off leash, and a ton of it is animal care. There's just, you need to exercise. You need to relieve yourself. Dogs need to be outside. And so there's no way, the way the property is situated on the hill, even if we put a 6-foot stockade fence right up the front, if you drive up over the hill, you're going to see everything. There's no actual, right? You can't block the view if the property is situated in that way. If you lived on the opposite side of the street, you could totally block your whole backyard. But not us. We were on the side of the street where we couldn't actually comply with the zoning laws. So we had to get permission from the town to run this business. Then we ended up adding a training building behind our house, which is a tertiary building. The zoning laws don't allow you to run a home-based business in a tertiary building. It has to be run in the primary building. So that had to be part of the variance as well. And then, aside from that, we had to develop up the property, take down a bunch of trees, put in a training field, really make it safe and appropriate for people with disabilities to come and train with their dogs outside, and be able to move around and have enough space to do that. So that was a ton of time invested, and Brian's really passionate about all that stuff. So we took down tons of trees. He's out there doing major landscaping, shaping the property, and has a really clear vision for making this place a sanctuary where people can come and train their dogs and feel safe and supported. And eventually we'll have little sections where we'll have multiple people using the space at the same time. So, which we pretty much do now, but it will be more expanded at some point.
The thing that you sort of, I don't want to say skip over, you mentioned, but I think there's something really powerful in your attitude when you run into the fact that what I want to do where I'm at is currently illegal, right? Effectively, right? That's a slight overstatement, but yeah, right? So and I think for most people, especially with a new idea and I want to do this thing on my own, and you get to that hurdle and you're like, well,
obstacle.
it's done. Like it's like,
Can't do it.
and I think it's so great because I think you see big corporations are very happy to go and lobby to get some laws changed or get variances or whatever. But I don't often hear about small business people like yourself doing that. And I think it's a great, it's just a great reminder. And to me, it's very inspiring because it's very easy to get discouraged when you're doing something new, when you're sticking your neck out there, when you're about to risk, find that you just being
making huge investments.
Huge, right?
Huge.
And being responsible. And being responsible for your own paycheck at the end of the day, right? Like all that stuff. It's a lot of scary stuff. And I think when a lot of people hit a hurdle like that, they go, yeah, well, I guess it's not meant to be. And I think it's a good reminder for everyone out there who wants to start a business, do something like this.
I've never been particularly good at taking no for an answer anyway. So I think that's sort of like built in. I think that there's some foundational things around thinking outside the box, right? And having a can-do attitude at your core, like literally thinking to yourself, there's got to be a way. I'm going to figure it out. And I'm willing to accept help. Right. And so like, that's a foundation. I think all of my social work values and my code of ethics, like follow me everywhere I go. Like I'm never not that person.
Yeah.
And so finding out like, who can I ask for help? How can I find a way to make this work? And how can I engage people to understand the value of the work so that they want to help and make things happen? So when we went in front of the zoning board and we talked about what we were doing, I mean, we also were donating time and dogs to veterans with disabilities.
Okay.
We were out visible, like we go out in the community. We're not just training at the house. A ton of it is here. But at the time, we didn't even have the building built yet. And so we're training at Home Depot, we're training at the hospital, we're training, at Marshall's and TJ Maxx, because this is what people need to do with their dogs, live their life. They're not going to just be in the backyard with their dog all the time. Maybe that's a pet dog. But, for people with disabilities, they need to be at the restaurant, at the train station, getting on and off the bus. Their dog has to be able to go with them at the airport and all the noises and all the lights and all the stuff. And so oftentimes Brian's out in the community with the dog. So when people on the zoning board heard about what we were doing, invariably someone's a dog lover, right? Someone's a veteran. Someone's, used to be a police officer or whatever. So they can appreciate what we're doing and they see value in it. And so if you see value in something, it's really important to find a way to convey that to other people and you will find your tribe. Certainly you'll find your naysayers. They're going to, that's fine. There's usually good information. If you're listening to them, you can be like, okay. Right? Like you can still gain from hearing from a naysayer. But if you're getting your story out there enough, you're going to find your tribe and people who believe in what you're doing that want to be part of it, or they want to be part of being part of the solution so that you can be doing it.
Yeah, there's something about that finding, because you're talking about this sort of fierce, independent sort of spirit that drives this, and it's like, no, not taking no for an answer. But at the same time, you got to go to the other side, and like these things are all social. These are all done through community, and no matter how great your independent idea is, you can't do it on your own.
No, and you don't live in a silo. No matter what, we talk a lot about this with like social anxiety and how we're like wired for connection and that fear of sort of rejection and not belonging. Like our DNA tells us from hunter-gatherer times, if our community doesn't accept us, we will die, period, right? You're not going to eat. You are going to die if your community doesn't accept you. And so you have to sort of harness that for good and turn it around and be like, hey, community, look what we're doing. Support us, be part of this, be excited about it. We have meet and greets with the community when we have a litter of puppies. We have people bring their children to socialize them and, just to give the puppies exposure to being touched and picked up and, have little kids running around like, hey, bring your kids and let my puppies bite them. This is great. We did puppy yoga with a litter of schnauzers and a litter of German shepherds at the most bitey age for the puppies. It just happened to be a really good date for the yoga instructor who also works here as a dog walker. And so I have some really cute videos on our Instagram and Facebook from these things. And there's people doing yoga. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, these puppies are going to be biting their ponytails and stealing their shoes and keys. And, but they weren't. They were just loving being with the people. And the people were loving doing yoga with puppies all around them, And so it was a really great opportunity for the dogs to do that and for people to get a chance to do that. And so now we have a connection with someone doing trauma-informed yoga. And they're going to come and do some of that, which is a little bit different than what you find in a regular yoga studio.
Yeah.
And we're going to integrate the dogs into that as well.
So there's something I thought about asking about earlier, actually, and it's sort of come right around. So I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. So I'm sure you've heard much about this sort of, it's in the on the news, they talk about like the male loneliness epidemic. I don't know that you need to gender it, to be honest. I think we have a loneliness epidemic in this country, and it seems like our current technology and social media feed that, are the largest piece of fuel for said loneliness epidemic. How much of the need for dogs or this opportunity for dogs comes from how much we're not connecting as people?
It's interesting because I've really noticed that people who are taking that chance to push themselves outside their comfort zone and go out with a dog attract much more attention and connection with other human beings that they don't know, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like this safe zone. Oh, what's your dog's name? What breed is that? Is it okay for me to pet your dog? Like, I know guys that used to borrow dogs to pick up chicks, right? Not that that's solo guy activity, but like, give me a cute puppy in a park and I'm going to find all your single ladies out there, right? Like, I've heard this said by other people. I did not make that up. Yeah. And so oftentimes it's a safer way for people to connect because it's not as intimate. It's like you have this one object removed. Right? It's like saying, oh, your shoes are so cool. Where'd you get those shoes? It's different than like, where do you live?
Right.
Yeah. What do you do for work? Some of those things feel really personal if you're not socializing very often. They're not normal conversations anymore. It's like, who asks that? Where do you work? Like, don't we all ask that? But not anymore, right? People are working online and they're ordering everything need from Jeff Bezos and like whatever. And so there's so many opportunities to be disconnected.
Yes.
But dogs can't just live inside the house all the time and be happy. Not most of them anyway. So you have to get out. And if you want a happy dog, take the dog with you when you're going out. Right. And then you want to be in the world, you want to meet people, you've kind of got this opportunity like right there to be able to like connect. I'm not a huge fan of dog parks, but I think they're very social for people.
Well, why do you say that?
So what I know about dogs is very few of them like really need dog friends that are just strangers to go hang out at the park, right? This is an escape park where like you can go watch people you don't know do cool tricks on a skateboard and like you can try them and just give each other high fives and be whatever, right? Dogs don't do that. So dogs have dog friends and have family members, other dogs that live in the house that they can be connected with. But many dog breeds really just want to be with the person. They don't really want to be with the dogs. Because we specialize in service dogs, therapy dogs, and emotional support animals, those dogs specifically are temperament to want to work with a person. If your service dog or your therapy or emotional support dog just wants to be doggy, right? Like your teenager who says, hi, Dad, I love you. You just drive into the mall and give me $20, right? Like you are a taxi. You can't have a person with a disability have their dog fall in love with just being with other dogs all the time. And the person with the disability just becomes a taxi. So you're fostering the bond. You want to keep that bond strong. You don't want to encourage the dog to just have to go out and make friends with strange dogs. The last thing you want is your dog running off to go play with strange dogs, right? So matching the breeds or matching the traits to people who need the dog with them. Dog parks are a hotbed of disease, right? Like so much around infection exposure control, right? Urine, feces, drinking out of the same water bowl. Gross. Much is transmissible. Some of those diseases are transmissible to people.
Awesome.
Once your dog gets it, then you can get it. We're talking strep. We're talking about Giardia. We're talking about there's another one that affects fertility of dogs, but that also can affect people. Wow. Right? And so they also get bullied. So some dogs are chill. Some dogs need to be the boss and they're leaders. They're looking for opportunities to lead. So you'll see a ton of little short clips by dog trainers now on social media saying like, look at the dog's body language, right? The tail is jacked. The mouth is closed. They're giving a hard stare. Some other dog across the way is tail tucked, starting to look down, feeling that pressure, like bullying. So imagine taking an introverted child to a playground where there's mostly other kids, but not really that many things to play with, just the other kids, and say, go have fun, go make friends. Good, look at that kid over there. Go play with that kid over there. Doesn't that look fun? Some of these kids would run away if they could, or hide, or be like, this is not fun for me. I'd like to, play my video game, read a book, take a walk, have one friend or two friends, and get together with a small group. But I don't need 20 people that I don't know.
Yeah.
Running around in different domains saying, tag, you're it. Right? So dogs don't need that. Some dogs do well in dog parks. That's great. A lot of dogs get sick. A lot of dogs get bullied. A lot of the dog daycares have fenced in yards and cameras so they can find out what happened when there's an incident and a dog bite or a dog gets bullied.
Wow.
Many dogs get harmed in a dog daycare and they're changed forever. They're fearful. They can't recover from that. If they're under 16 weeks old, you can do irreparable damage, exposure to trauma. Over 16 weeks old, there's more of resilience, right, to heal from these things.
Yeah.
But many dogs don't heal from a dog attack or from a dog fight. They become reactive to other dogs that look similar, contextually situations that feel the same. And then here you are, you invested all this time and love and care in your animal to keep them healthy. And now they're scared shitless when you go certain places, or they're reactive or aggressive or barking because they feel unsettled and they feel unsafe. So it's our job to protect them and give them meaningful growth opportunities. Proper socialization of a dog is taking them places to see different things, see different people, hear different things, and be comforted to know that they don't really have to do anything other than be with you and follow your last direction. Like, just do the last thing I told you to do. They don't have to go and meet every person unless they're a therapy dog and that's really what they love to do. Then maybe they're a good match for meeting people. But if you have a service dog, you don't want them to be so happy to run up to strangers and meet people, because when you need them, because your blood pressure just dropped and you're about to pass out, and your dog's like, sorry, I gotta go talk to that lady over there, seems really nice. See, socialization isn't like they need to make friends with dogs. They need to see dogs as like trees and other things in their environment. Like, oh, look, there's a dog over there, and there's a tree over there. Oh, look, there's a house over there. Oh, it's a car going by, it's a bicycle going by, it's a motorcycle going by. Right? I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything about that. None of it involves me. That's the dog that's going to do the best.
It's wild because there's just so much more to this than I thought there was going to be. And
totally.
I think
we could just, I could go on for hours and hours.
I hadn't thought about it much, right? Like, we have this in the last, again, 20, 30 years, the incidence of dog ownership, dog involvement in everyday American life is way more.
And dog training. I mean, it used to be dog just walk the streets, right? Like your neighbor would say, oh, I saw your dog out earlier. Like, they wouldn't even send your dog home or take your dog in the house or call the animal control or the police. They would just be like, oh yeah, your dog went that way. They wouldn't even try to corral your dog. They were also, people had one dog. Right? They didn't have multiple dogs.
Right.
And there wasn't as much, I'm going to tread lightly here, but there weren't as many crap dogs, right? So I can't tread lightly, but you're importing dogs that were bred for food, right? And thinking that those genetic lines are going to give you animals that give a shit about you, and they're going to be trainable, and they're going to be resilient, and they're going to be healthy. No, I mean, it's great to rescue dogs. I think the dogs need rescuing, but sometimes the people who rescue them need rescuing. Right? Because it's way more than they can handle. Because what has happened in the rescue industry has really burdened dog owners and families in a way that maybe they didn't anticipate. There's rippling health effects based on policies of rescues and how that works, early neuter and early spay, and all of the things that can happen because of that. And you rescued the dog. You can't take back the early neuter or the early spay, right? And so there's like a lot of rippling effects of, I could try really hard to have like really healthy, genetically tested, orthopedically tested dogs bred, and they might take and they might not. But some crap dog is just going to get pregnant in the street by some other crap dog. And then there's going to be a bunch of mixed breed puppies. Nobody knows what they are. We don't know what their drives are. We don't know if they have a weak nerve. We don't know if they're going to be aggressive. We don't know how trainable they're going to be, and or how healthy they're going to be, because they have inherited traits from other sides and other, so it's really an interesting dynamic. People will get, we had one customer come to us who said they wanted to get a dog from a rescue. That was their mission. And they wanted this dog to be their emotional support dog, potentially trained for service. And I was like, it's not going to happen, but okay. And one of the things that we do when we're of service to someone is go to the rescues and do temperament tests on the dogs that are there, so that the best possible match, in one visit, right? Even if you bring home a foster dog or a rescue dog, a month later, they're like a different dog because they've settled in, right? They can relax, let their hair down. And so, but this woman got lucky, and she waited months and months and months and went to several different rescues. She wanted a certain size. She wanted certain breeds because she knew that they might have the traits she's looking for. And eventually she found one, and he did great. And he came here for boarding and training. And it worked out. He comes back to brush up every now and then. And that was great luck.
That's awesome. So I feel like we could go on forever, and we are running a little tight on time. We're gonna have to have you back for another. We're gonna have to have some more conversations, because I feel like I'm having like categories of things we could talk about popping up. So we'll have to talk about that, because I'd love to learn more about this. I've not historically been a dog person, so it's so much fun to learn.
And you should come for a visit at some time, because it's like a different thing.
I would love to. So before we wrap up, remind us what the services that you guys what you provide. So and where people can find you and what you can do for them.
Sure. All right. So we have a regular website, searching Google for Northeast Therapy and Service Dogs.
And we'll link that.
We are also, same name, Northeast Therapy and Service Dogs, on Instagram and Facebook. We can get messages through any of those. There's a link to send us a message through any of them, but our direct email is ntsd@comcast.net, right? ntsd@comcast.net. And we do everything by appointment because it's our home.
Yep.
And so very rarely people just pull in the driveway. That does happen. But for the most part, people reach out, we schedule a time, an initial evaluation, training needs are, or if you don't even have a dog and you need some support on what you're looking for, what you expect from a dog, we don't charge for that. And when we're helping someone make a match, we don't charge for that. And we don't just sell our own dogs to people. We help them find a match that's right for them, whether it's one of our dogs or not. And so we don't charge for that either.
Awesome. So
we're in Newfields. We're in Newfields, New Hampshire, which is right near Exeter, easy to get to off of Route 101 off of 95.
Awesome. So I am definitely going to come for a visit, because I want to see this all in action. That sounds really exciting.
Oh yeah, and you got to meet some of our dogs. They're such characters. They're so fun.
Yeah, I would love to. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And there's more, right?
Oh yeah.
Because of our variants, I got invited to join the zoning board because I came in so prepared with information, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I ran for the select board, and I won by a lot of votes. So
yeah,
now I'm on the select board, and I sit on the planning board too in town. So.
Powerful woman. So we'll have to. I definitely want to talk more about that when we have some more time, because like I said, we had. I was like, we'll spend a couple minutes talking to this couple, and then the entire conversation.
And there's so many hot topics.
Oh yeah.
Training tools and there's like so many hot topics.
And for me, so much that I want to learn. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great having you.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
We would love to have you back. Take it easy.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. That was Catherine Tarnowski of Northeast Therapy and Service Dogs, or is it Service and Therapy Dogs, other way around?
I think it was that.
Yeah. We will have all the links in our in the video here for following up with her. A great resource. As you can tell, she has a ton of knowledge on the psychology of people, on the psychology of dogs, and on how those things come together to really support people. I really like that, because this is one of those areas in which I think there's a lot of baloney in the service dogs industry, and to see someone doing it right and really putting the passion into it and the attention that it deserves, it's huge, because I know people who dogs have had a major impact on their life. And when we're talking about the problems that face so many people today, whether it's veterans coming back from our many too many wars, whether it's regular people struggling with loneliness, with feeling isolated, there's a huge thing there, and so much that I hadn't even thought of before. So I think it's really exciting. It was great having you guys with us today. DZ, any last words for the day?
No.
How about Des? You got anything, Engineer Des, back there? We're all sweating and dying in here. We're doing our best. I think we would have probably had a longer conversation if it wasn't 105 degrees and feeling like Florida in here. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you were here for Sunday sanity check, it's great to talk about everything that's going on with Iran. Take care of your own mental health right now and in the meantime. A lot of what's going on is very scary, and I don't think any of that is by accident. I really do believe that the one constant is of our current system is a explicit attempt to try and make you scared, to try and make you feel unconnected, to try and make you feel like there's no hope for the future, and there is. And so connect with people. And be hopeful for the future. We can do better than this. Our current situation has got this way because we weren't paying attention and working real hard. And it's time to pay attention and work real hard. We can do this all together. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I am Oliver Ox. This has been the Doing Better Show. I will see you next week. Great guest, Melissa Blasek, who is a former New Hampshire state rep, runs the Rebuild New Hampshire organization. Phenomenal fighter for liberty. Another strong woman, really blazing a path. So we'll continue our long list of a strong woman blazing a path with Melissa Blasek next week. Again, thank you so much to Catherine Tarnowski for joining us and teaching us all about the dogs, the therapy dogs, the service dogs, the emotional support animals. I'll see you guys all next week for the Doing Better Show.